your extra margin. And hopefully, if you guys are willing to share in our Facebook group that the chat's live now, and if people want to join, they can. I'd appreciate it because I don't want to have to try and go back on my screen to do that. So anyways, so the first week we talked about, really organizing, finding all your bills, contacting your creditors, locating all your interest rates and your repayment terms, mapping that out over time and seeing how long it's really going to take you to get out of debt. And so hopefully all of you now have at least an idea of where your debt is, where your repayment terms are. You know exactly how long it's going to take you to pay back your debt. You know exactly what method you want to use. We talked about the snowball. We talked about the high interest rate first method. So you're going to kind of have to decide which method you're going to go for. And then we kind of talked the difference between wants and needs, things that you really want, things that you really need, how we get through all that, how we sort through deciding what really is a need, what is a want. And then kind of going through this paradigm shift like we talked about. For me, for example, in my family, I have really changed my thinking about how I'm spending. So now and it's so funny because like this last pay, Rachel will vouch for me on this one, we had to come up with $400 because our dog, we don't know how it happened Saturday night, but he was running outside and he ended up having a gaping wound in his paw because we have an underground electric fence, and he got out and then was running around the garage where there is no fence basically, and then got zapped again when he came back in the fence. And so between our driveway, because we had a lot of snow and ice this weekend, and so between our driveway and the backyard, he totally slashed his paw open. And so, I was like, oh, thank you God so much that I live this way, because I had the extra money and it didn't even affect, our weekly budget because I had this extra money set aside. So we talked last week, and this week I don't have as many slides again because I'm going to be going on the internet some to show us some things, but we really talked about how do we really get out of debt, and then documenting your debt. And then for some reason my budget slides are not showing in here. The next week we talked about building a budget. And so once we really got down to it, a budget is basically just a spending plan of how you're going to spend your money. And so we really talked about setting up priorities in our bills of what needs to be paid first and second. And we did get a little into collection agencies and really outstanding debt and bankruptcy the other week. But tonight we're going to kind of switch gears, and we're going to be looking at investing your margin. And so I only have one slide really to start with, that because I'm going to be discussing a lot of things with you. So you may want to take some notes since I don't have as many visuals tonight. We had kind of a family emergency here this afternoon. It led me away from my computer for a couple hours here, but we're back on track now. Anyways, we are going to talk tonight about investing your margin. And so there are different ways to invest. Savings, assets, and futures are the three categories that I'm going to be talking about tonight. And so I thought maybe with a little bit of note-taking, you might help you a little bit to get it down on paper in front of you. And if not, if you just want to listen, that's fine too. You guys can tell I'm a teacher right by now, I'm sure. But anyway, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is, actually we're going to go in the middle, and we're going to talk about investing in assets. And so this is where, really once you've moved beyond, setting up your budget and creating a little bit of an emergency fund. And really we didn't discuss that, so I guess that's really where we should start tonight, is creating an emergency fund. And we did talk a little bit about that last week, but we're going to get really much deeper into that here this evening. Basically, an emergency fund, I've seen people live on emergency funds anywhere from 1 month of their expendable income, or their net income, I should say, after taxes, to 6 months or more of income. But really what you need to have on hand, most people will tell you that you want to have at least anywhere from 3 to 6 months of income on hand, liquid, like that, what we call liquid. It needs to be a liquid savings that you can get to quickly. So for example, the reason that you want to have this extra savings is because if something comes up, like I said, you have a vet bill, you have some kind of crises that, you lose a job, any emergency. I know you guys probably could list a million in the chat. So think of something that comes up and list it there so everybody can see. So that there are things just that in life we don't expect, and that's why I realized after many years of living paycheck to paycheck, that I was not creating margin in my life. I didn't have any margin, and that it just made more sense. It kind of occurred to me one day, why am I not setting something aside for when these things come up? I need to start planning, not catastrophe, but I need to start planning the inevitable, which is life. Life gets in the way. Life is ups and downs. It's left and right. It's a windy road. It is not a straight shot. And here's what really has occurred to me, and this is maybe a little bit of a deeper thought here, but when you take a loan out at the bank and they give you your terms of repayment, it is a statistical number. They're saying to you, have this many payments over this amount of time. And what I realized one day is that loans really do not factor margin. Repayments to banks and to things like that don't factor life. We have to factor that life. It's not the bank's job to understand that life comes up. It's just, they're basing it on a perfect number system. But repayment of a debt is a perfect number system. But income and life are not perfect number systems. Like, in other words, yes, you can track a debt and you can say, okay, every month my balance is going down by this much exactly. But in real life, your income does not always, and your income and the bills that come in life do not always match that perfect system. So we have to be prepared for this margin. So once you have saved up some margin, like I said, you need to at least have 1 month. If you don't have at least, and for most people, that's going to be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. You want to at least have maybe no less than $2,000 in your savings, liquid savings. In other words, if you're going to invest in anything in the future, fine. Like, we're going to talk about CDs, we're going to talk about bonds. Tonight we're going to be talking about all of those kinds of investments, but you really want to make sure that you have what we call liquid assets ready, available. And I'm not talking gold that you can trade in. I'm talking like cash on hand, pretty much. So you'll want to keep that in just basically either a savings account. I've heard of people keeping it stashed in their bed as cash, or things like, you hear these older generation people that when they pass away, people find cash in their mattress or someplace like that. But I think in our generation, it's still okay to keep most of that in the bank. So anyway, so you must create that first initial step of margin, because then once you have that, then it doesn't pay to start investing or even really paying down debt. And that's one thing I wish that I would have talked a little bit more about when we started the debt pay down a couple weeks ago, is that if you don't have that savings built up, you're just going to keep going back into debt. Like, if you don't adjust your lifestyle and create your little bit of margin, then something is going to come up. Like, you're paying all this money to pay off your debt and you're not saving at least a little bit. Then when something else comes up, then you're just going to go back into debt to pay that off. So it's like being on a hamster wheel. You're just going to keep going around and around and around. And so to get away from that, the best way to do that is to have this liquid savings. And so one recommendation that I definitely want to give you is to, if you do get some money back in taxes, that is a really good time to start putting that money away, because it is sometimes hard week to week, to do that. But if you can get kind of a jump start with that, that is, for me personally, the way to go. The other thing is, if you're planning a huge Christmas or a vacation this summer, you may want to just nix that for a year until if you can't save it from paycheck to paycheck out of margin that you're creating, then you're going to have to find another way to cut expenses to get that liquid asset, that liquid savings available. So then once we have that money that we're creating in our margin and we're ready and we've got this, this liquid savings built up, then what I would suggest, and I'm not a financial advisor, so, please do not misconstrue what I'm saying here. This is just one mom talking to other moms, about things that I've done. I'm a teacher and I'm just sharing with you, things that I've learned. You want to take some of that money and start using it, maybe, whether it's $50 a pay or $40 a pay even, and start working the deals at the stores with your coupons and with the sales to start building somewhat of a stockpile. Now, when I say stockpile, I do not necessarily mean that you have to have 100 things of deodorant. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that buying when the price is low, and we talked about that last week. In fact, I'm going to see. I do not know why my PowerPoint keeps eating all my slides. But anyways, if you want to, let me see if it's on the bottom of this one. Yes, okay, here we are. So we're going to come back to this one real quick. And we talked last week about all these different ways of creating margin. We talked about, whether you change your cooking, whether you start couponing, whether you start shopping smarter. These are all ways that you're going to start creating that margin. And once you see a little bit of that extra income coming in, then you're going to start buying when the price is low. That's kind of one thing that we did kind of talk about in our couponing webinar. If you missed it, it was really great the other evening. We got to have one of those. And so you basically want to start taking that little bit of extra money, and you want to use some of that maybe to purchase a couple extra deodorants when they're on sale, or maybe you want to purchase a couple extra rolls of toilet paper. So for example, this week at CVS, they have a $10 gift card if you spend $30 on certain paper products. So I'm going to be stocking up. I have plenty of Bounty, so I'm going to take that $30, that little extra, and I'm going to get $30 worth of Charmin. Because I know we talked about being brand specific before, but I am very brand specific when it comes to toilet paper and paper toweling. I do Bounty and Charmin, and I don't budge. And I know that that's not always the most frugal way to live, but I do purchase them when they're on sale or with savings. So this weekend, one thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that $30. I'm going to buy 3 $10 things of Charmin. They're $9.99 right now, and then I'll probably get maybe 1 or 2 other things of $1 tissues. I'll pay $30, but I actually have ECBs from last week, so I'll end up probably spending maybe $24. And then I will get a $10 gift card. So what I'm going to use my gift card this week for, I have a $20 Groupon that I paid $10 for Old Navy. So I'm going to get another Old Navy gift card for $10, use it with my $20 Old Navy Groupon, and when I go down to Old Navy this weekend, I'll have $30. So I need to get a couple things. Like right now, I noticed the last time I was there, their scarves were on sale. And I work at a school, 2 different schools, and I'm outside a lot, going from either my room. Believe it or not, at one of my schools, I'm in like a bread truck outside, which is heated and air conditioned. But when I'm going from school to school, I use a lot of scarves, and they get kind of ratty looking. So that's just one way where I'm going to buy when the price is low. And I actually created money where I didn't have money before. I'm pulling from the extra money from the groceries to put towards clothing. So as much as you can buy from one and one category to help the other category in your budget, that's another good thing to do. So, but getting back to savings, so when we're talking about assets are things like a home. Your car is an asset. Your home, your car is an asset. Anything you own, they're all your assets, okay? So jewelry, basically anything in your home that's of value are your assets. And so if you're renting, a home is an asset that you're investing in. And so obviously that's one of the best ways to create an investment is in your home, because you're always going to need a place to live. So if you're already paying money to rent, and rent in our market, in our area, I will tell you, is almost as expensive, if not as expensive or more, than owning a home. It really makes more sense, at least where we live. And I don't know your housing market, so that's something you'd have to ask a realtor in your area. But it is way more lucrative here right now to own than it is to rent, because till you get all your, even with escrow taxes, it's still better to own than it is to rent. So obviously your best asset is going to be your home, because normally, now I know the market right now is kind of scary, but normally a home's value appreciates, not depreciates. Appreciate means to increase in value, but to depreciate means to decrease in value. So a car is a perfect example of something that depreciates in value. You buy it for so much money, but it goes down in price of what it's worth year after year. As you put more miles on it and wear and tear on your car, the value of your car is depreciated. So we want assets that appreciate. And so this is where your thinking has to change. And this is where it was really hard for me, because even though I talked about last week's seminar about how I have this really good friend that we went to a comedy club the other week for $10. We took our 2 friends. So we bought 4 tickets for $10 on Groupon and went to this comedy club. And then I went to a restaurant.com and got a restaurant.com gift card, and we all went out to dinner, and our whole bill was like $30 for 4 of us. And that was, with appetizers and all kinds of neat things. So we split it 2 ways. It was like $15, $20. So we ended up going out, and while we were at the comedy club, I saw this girl that I had worked with when I taught at one of my schools, and I just loved her, because she and I would drive to school with our Toyota Corollas, where the other girls our age were driving their Cadillac Escalades with their fake hair and their fake nails and their dyed hair. And it always just made me laugh, because this girl's name is Cricket, and that was her nickname. Everybody in town has always called her that, and so we love Cricket. And so I was talking to her, and I just thought it was so funny that, I have really struggled since I left that school at times with there have been times where I want a new vehicle, where I don't want to drive the same a 12-year-old van all the time, but I'm keeping that van as long as I can to run it into the ground because it's depreciating in value, and I know that a car as an investment is not a good investment. So I'm going to take that car payment money that I might be paying, and I'm going to put it into paying down debt or investing in my son's college fund or something else, or paying down my mortgage earlier. So the biggest thing is that, like I said, in a normal market, your house does appreciate in value. And so again, if you're already going to be paying rent, you might as well be paying a little extra to make an investment for yourself. Also, your homeowners, whatever, I think it's your taxes, or no, I'm sorry, your homeowner's insurance, and I think your taxes too, and even your interest are all tax deductible. So like the mortgage interest that we pay, like we itemize on our taxes because our mortgage interest is deductible, and our home equity line of credit, by the way, technically right now I could go today and pay it off, but I haven't because I'm keeping some of that money just as extra liquid assets. So so technically right now we only have one debt left, and that's my husband's student loan. So other than our mortgage, so I'm so excited about that. So we're working our way there, but it was just this month that we finally had enough that we could go and pay that off if we wanted to. So, and as you've heard me talk, my mom and grandma, I do all of their finances too. So I'm they're at a point where my mom's house is actually going to be paid off in 13 months or less, and she's only 55. So we're so excited that her house is going to be paid off, and that's going to be her biggest asset. So in other words, these appreciate in value, and things like cars depreciate, gold normally, like jewelry, things like that. Unless you're going to keep it for 40, 50 years, or it's an antique, or you're going to really keep it up, it retains some of its value, but usually you're going to get less for jewelry than you would, just going out, and buying new or whatever. In other words, used jewelry isn't going to be worth as much as what you're going to pay for it in the store. So that's really, to me, while it is an asset, that probably, I don't know that I'd consider it an appreciating asset unless it depends on what type of jewelry it is. So moving on, then the next thing that we're going to talk about are futures. Futures are things in the future. This is the kind of savings where you're going to be saving for your child's college fund. You're going to be, or maybe you're saving for a down payment on a house, or maybe you're saving for your next car, or maybe you're saving for retirement. These are all the different types of investments that you can be saving for. The vehicle to get you there may look the same. For example, if you are going to be saving for retirement, there are specific retirement savings things like an IRA or a 401k. And now IRA is basically a type of savings account for your money. There are two different kinds. One is the kind where you can actually pay the taxes before the money goes in. The other kind, you pay the taxes after the money comes out. Basically, I know that a lot of financial investors say that it's better to pay the taxes after they come out, but personally, I feel that it's better. For me, I mean, I've made this personal decision. I'm not recommending this for anybody else, but I think it's better if you're going to do an IRA, I would want to pay the taxes before they went in, because then I know that money has already been taxed. It's my money to take out, and I know exactly how much I have, because normally taxes are going to be at least 30% of whatever's in your retirement account. A 401k is usually set up by your employer, and that is where usually you're investing so much and they're also matching up to a certain amount. So if you put in 10% of $100, you're paying in $10, they might put in 2%, which maybe it's $2, and so you really don't want to, those, and the other thing about investing in any kind of retirement is that usually there is a penalty for withdrawal. So, and they do that on purpose because they want you to save it for retirement. That's why they do that a lot of times. And some employers will allow you to take a no interest loan out on your retirement. Others will not let you take out any loan on your retirement. So if you do pull out your retirement, which is, to me, a last resort. I mean, you would only want to do that as a last resort, like over filing bankruptcy, or so many bill collectors calling that, and you totally can't get a consolidation loan, or something else that could at least, get by for the time being, so you could get things kind of squared away. That, to me, is a last resort. Obviously, selling your home or getting rid of your retirement are always going to be, hopefully, your last resort. So these are futures. Another example of a future for your child is like a 529 plan, which is actually a tuition account that, at least for us in the state of Pennsylvania, we're able to put money into a 529 for our child. And it's because I don't know as much. I don't want to steer any in the incorrect path. So you definitely want, if you're looking to invest seriously, you'll want to still go see a financial planner. And the other thing that we didn't talk about that I think is very important in protecting your assets and your savings and your futures is insurance to some degree. You do probably want to have some level of insurance for disability. If you own a home or you have children, you definitely want to have life insurance. And you definitely want to have short-term disability in case you would lose your job from being disabled until a long-term disability would kick in. And so the thing is, even then, you're probably not going to make as much as what you were making before. So these are all things, to think about. And again, we had that conversation the other week where my grandfather was a coroner, and I was telling you all about how, I've seen a lot, and people don't think that life is going to go a certain way, but life can go that way. And so we have to prepare for that kind of margin also. In a sense, insurance is preparing for margin. It's creating some margin because you're protecting your assets for yourself or for your children. And it's kind of the responsible thing to do, in my opinion, because you're making sure that, your family has what it needs if something were to happen to you, and so that's how at least my husband and I feel about protecting, like I said, all of our assets and savings and futures. So the other types of investments that most people will talk about are, and I'm just going to kind of like type out my notes here a little bit as we go, just for myself really, but the other types of investments are usually stocks and bonds, CDs and mutual funds, which on top of things, we're going to kind of talk about savings and money market accounts. And so what you're going to be looking for is, and this is why we talk about not really investing heavily until you've paid down your debt, is because just as you're paying interest on the money you've borrowed, you have to weigh how much interest am I paying on the money I've borrowed from how much interest am I really going to get from any of these kinds of investments, which is why we talk about, creating margin. The best way to create margin and to start investing is to reduce your spending and to coupon and to create margin through lifestyle changes, not as much through, I'm going to pay down the debt and save this or this at the same time. What I do recommend, I think is wise, is if you have a 401k at your employer's, then that's like free money. So you just, you should be investing with that. If they're giving you 2%, that's money that you didn't have to earn. It's money that they're just giving you. So that does make a lot of sense. But when you look at stocks are basically probably to me the most gambling type of investment that you can do, because the same thing with stocks is the opposite of really how we shop. It's the complete opposite in the sense that you want to, well, no, I guess I should say it's the same. It's not the opposite. I guess it's kind of like you're buying when the price is low, okay, and you're selling when the price is high with stocks. So I guess what I'm saying is there's an extra step with stocks. You're buying when the price is really low. You're hoping to get stock for maybe $10 a share and then sell it at $40 a share. Personally, unless you are a math wizard, I would not recommend it just straight up buying stocks. My grandparents did this for me, and luckily, I've held on to it for a long time. But they started out with a certain amount of bank stock, and then it did split a couple times over the course of the last 15 years, 18 years that I've had it. But I don't always recommend that because, even when I go to cash in that stock, I'm going to have to pay capital gains, which is 30% usually of whatever you made off of that stock. So if my grandparents bought it for $300 and I'm selling it for, $1,000, then I'm going to be, paying at least 30% on $700, which is like $210 at least, that I'm going to be paying out of that $1,000. So that's a lot of money to be giving up on stocks. And really, in a sense, you're going to be paying capital gains in some direct way, whether it's through income tax or whatever, on a lot of these. But I definitely think that stocks should be limited to people that are professionals, know what they're doing for the most part. So bonds are something that you usually go, it's a government-backed type of security that they back it, and you basically go in and you buy it, and then you have to hold on to it for so long if you want it to be worth the ultimate value that it'll be worth in the end. So if you go in and you buy, a $25 bond, then, like, for example, my husband and I found one from his grandparents one time that was like a $25 bond, but when he went and cashed it in, he had waited so far beyond the cash-in period that it was worth like $75. So it did increase in value, but You have to be, again, the biggest thing about investing that I want to share with you tonight, and that's the other thing that is the most important thing out of all the things that we're talking about, and I'm going to actually type it out so you can see it visually and hopefully hear this, and Rachel will agree with me on this because we're learning this in our business model right now, is don't put all your eggs, and I'm sure you can finish this, into one basket. This means that you do not ever put all of your savings into one area. You should always be what they call diversified. You should always diversify where you're investing your money. So even people that, I know that there are a lot of people who put a lot into paying off their home really quickly. They pay off their home and they pay off their home and they don't save their money anywhere else. So let's say that, a couple years ago you decided to start, investing in your house even more by paying, and that was the only investment you had, was to pay down your home because you knew you were going to sell it and move somewhere else, and so the profits you were going to make off your home, that was going to be your retirement money. Well, obviously right now with the markets the way that they are, you're not going to be making as much of a profit off of your house. So in a sense, then you did put all your eggs in one basket. And so even though, yeah, you might be making a profit, it's still maybe not what you could have made had you diversified some. So that's why they always recommend having many layers of savings. And so it's kind of like, and I kind of do this also with my money whenever I'm like if I have a couple extra dollars here, there, I'll squirrel it away in different places, not physically in my house, but like I'll, kind of in my mind, in my checkbook, or maybe I'll forget about that I had that money, or I'll just do it on purpose so that when a crisis comes, I have this little extra money here or there. So it's kind of like not putting all my eggs in one basket there too. I'm kind of making sure that I always have a little bit here and there. So the same thing goes for investing. So moving on. So bonds are, like I said, usually a government-backed treasury that that you can purchase. I purchased mine at the bank. I've my son's grandparents have bought some for him for his college fund that way, and they do them buy them at the bank. Another thing is a CD or an investment firm too. I guess you could always go through like there's like Edward Jones and Merrill Lynch, and you could go through your bank a lot of times. But another one are CDs, certificates of deposits. Unfortunately, right now they are drawing no interest. Right now, that is the unfortunate part. That if you're going to do this, is CDs are probably your most secure investment that have a little bit of a higher interest rate than a savings account. But it's something where you got to really decide, is it worth it, to put something into a CD, because they have terms. Like you can get a 3-month CD, you can get a 6-month CD, you can get a year-long CD, you can get a couple-year-long CD. I mean, CDs vary by the length of time that you take them out. But the problem is, if you pull out of your CD early, there's a penalty. Right now, I have to be honest with you, there's so low interest rates on CDs. I would probably just pay down the debt first. Or put it into a liquid asset or something else. I would probably, but this is probably where you should be putting at least, like they usually recommend like 50% of your income being in secure savings of some sort. And so maybe you want to have some of your secure savings here. So in other words, what you want to do is you want to diversify your investments so that some of your savings are in what we call a little bit of a higher risk category. That's what most financial advisors will tell you. Again, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not professing to be, so please clear all this with your local financial advisor at your bank or wherever you go to. But usually they will tell you that you want to put maybe 50 to 60, maybe even some are as high as 70% of your investments into low risk categories, which would be like a savings account or a CD or a mutual fund. Or a mutual fund is basically where you have a fund manager. That's a person whose job is to take everyone's money and then put it in a big pot and buy and sell stocks out of that pot, and maybe other securities such as bonds and CDs. They're doing all of this basically for you. The problem is, if you have a terrible fund manager, or your fund manager is one of those guys that you see on TV all the time that took everybody's money and ran with it, that can be a problem too, which is why you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. I totally cannot think of that guy's name. I'm pulling up chat. Can anybody think of his name? What was that man's name that was just put in jail? Oh, I cannot think of his name. There's a guy that was on the news for several months that he took everybody's money, and it was like he was supposed to be like a fund manager. Oh, anyways, but he went to jail for it, because there are people out there that are scrupulous and do that kind of stuff to innocent, nice people. So anyways, so that's one thing that you want to make sure. That's another reason why you might want to diversify and not put all of it necessarily in a mutual fund. But the mutual fund manager's job is to take all of this, what I'm telling you, and they do it. They're buying and selling in stock. They've got some in high risk stock. They've got some in low risk stock. They've got some bonds. They've got some CDs. And then sometimes, but basically before you invest in a mutual fund, you should get the rundown or the data sheet on that mutual fund to see what are they investing in. They should tell you, you should be able to know what your fund manager is investing in, and they should be able to tell you, okay, and there are some that are based all on stocks. There are some mutual funds that are based all on bonds. There are some that are based on a blending of all this. So you'd have to talk to a fund manager to see which fund is the best one for you. But remember, you might see huge growth in a mutual fund that is based heavily in stocks that are doing well that year, So you have to be really careful, with that. So that's why some of the best ways, I listened to a guy named Larry Burkett who has since passed away from cancer. But if you ever go to crown.org, it is a Christian-based financial ministry where Crown actually, they do a lot with, let me see if I can find it here. But Crown, they do a lot with helping people to, this is a great resource on how to do well with your money. And so basically their principle behind the whole money thing is that it's God's money and we're just here for a time and we're using it as a tool. And so, we're not going to have it forever. As my father-in-law says, you can't take the U-Haul to the graveyard, or you don't see U-Hauls at the graveyard either. And so this is, they have a system called Envelopes, which is envelope budgeting online that you can do. And they have a lot of podcasts, a lot of free materials and resources that you can pull from. I'm sure that so does Dave Ramsey, and so do all of a lot of the other people, that financial gurus out there probably have a lot of things that you can look into also. But Larry Burkett very early on always felt that the best investment was your home. He always felt that a home was the best investment. And I don't know that people would always completely agree with that now that the housing market is, taking a turn here. But I do think that most people agree that the housing market will eventually come back. And so I do think that our investments will rebound. Yes, what was Bernie Madoff? That's right, it was the Madoff guy. Thank you, Emily. That was driving me nuts. So anyways, so we definitely want to make sure that we're, diversifying our investments. And so for me, obviously, my husband, we have a 6-year-old who's adopted, like I told you before, from Guatemala. We want to be investing in his college fund. We also want to be preparing for our retirement, but we also want to be paying down our debt and trying to live debt-free as much as we can. And so when we're looking at our 5, steps, it really is difficult to get to this top level. And I don't think that the majority of people do make it this far. If I were to look across average America, I think most people get fed up with the waiting part of it and they cash their chips in early or they go back in debt. And so, maybe they end up, they end up being 50 or 60 and not having any retirement. And so it does take discipline to be able to set aside money every paycheck to put into a retirement account. So you just have to be really, diligent about doing that. And that's why we've created the group, and that's why we're going to be holding webinars regularly to kind of stay on track. I mean, it's kind of like, I kind of view our group as like Weight Watchers for money. I don't know. We're just meeting. It's accountability. It's a way of holding each other accountable to make sure that we're trying to stay on track with that, because I think it's easy, just like with eating, it's easy to get off track with all of these things. So one of the things that I did want to talk to you about besides, so if you are going to be saving for a college fund, I have seen people, and I saw Ruth Ann, your comment about 2 college funds, so I have seen people invest for their child's college many different ways. I met a guy once that bought rental properties, and that was his investment for his son, and when his son turned 18, he sold them. Another guy flipped houses. I've seen people, like I said, it just straight up invest into a savings account or a 529. Again, you always have to look at your interest rates to see what is drawing you the most interest, and with a house that would be really hard to do, so you'd be more like watching the market with that to make sure that you're getting, but again, if you're running a rental property, you should be seeing a rate of income over time. Again, that does involve some risk more than just throwing money into a savings account, because then if your tenant moves out and you're stuck with rent, then you're kind of in trouble, which is why you got to be leery. I mean, there's always 2 sides to every investment. You always got to be careful to make sure, and that's why, again, we don't put all of our eggs in one basket. So these are just some of, another one for college too that I was going to talk about is uPromise. It's not much, but you actually get a little bit by shopping, and you attach all of your shopping cards to an investment fund. And in a couple years, we've made like $100 maybe for our son through mostly my CVS shopping is how we've done that. CVS and maybe some our giant bonus cards and some different things like that. If you buy items that are like a uPromise item, you can also clip coupons from the uPromise site. And one thing that I did do is they do have a cashback credit card, and so you can actually, like, just like points, instead of you getting cash back or getting points for something, that money goes into your uPromise account. So there, when I was taking some college classes, I would have to, as teachers, we take college classes and get reimbursed for those. So I would have to take these like $1,000 classes and put it on a credit card for like a month or two until I got my grade. And then when you submit your grade, then you get the cash back from your employer. But in the meantime, I would put it on one of those kind of credit cards and then get the points, and then I would pay the credit card off from savings right away and then just get reimbursed eventually once the class was over. So that was also some ways I put gas. Again, cashback credit cards are really only for people that can pay them off every month and are very disciplined to be able to do that. If you're not one of those people and that's not your personality, then don't do it. It just depends. I had to admit, I'm obsessed with finding ways to save money any way that I can, and I'm just diligent about it because I just want to I've always been somebody that likes to make something out of nothing, so to speak. So these are some, like I said, these are just some of the different ways to invest. Do you guys have any questions based on some of the things that we've talked about, or questions from previous weeks of webinars? And the other thing I want to tell you is that we're going to be taking a couple breaks here the next couple weeks, and my goal is to turn this into like a once a month meeting webinar. Now that we've covered the 5 steps, we'll probably just do it like once a month. Unless you guys have a topic that you want me to cover specifically, let me know in the Facebook forum, and I will definitely go ahead and we can take a week and talk about. I know we talked last week about this week being all about investments. Okay, so Laurel says your college savings plans through the bank. Are you asking me that question, Laurel, or is that about the Gerber thing? Just so I make sure I'm answering the right question. Okay, for me, college savings, we've set up a 529, but there's also in Pennsylvania, I don't know if it's Pennsylvania specific or if it's all over the U.S., but it's called a Coverdell, which is a unique savings account for college savings for children. And then I also have uPromise and just different ways. So I'm, again, with my son's college fund, I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. And then we also have other modes of, like my grandmother, when she died, we had some investments from that we set aside for his college fund. So those are, I just haven't, like I said, put it all in one basket. The 529 is something that you can actually, the 529 is actually something that you can send a payment in. They send a paper to you, and you can mail a payment once a month. I think you can have it automatically deducted too. A lot of these things can be automatically deducted. The other thing that I was thinking too is don't automatically deduct things if, and this is something I'm saying just for the group, not to anybody in specific, but just I would not recommend automatic deductions if you're not paying all your bills necessarily on time right now, because that can really throw you off. If you're not going to be like totally disciplined about automatic payments, don't do it right now until you're really ready for that. Is there somewhere to find all the college saving fund options? Well, that's something that while you're with me on the webinar here, and I'm going to have to shut down just a little early tonight because I have another webinar I have to go to at 9 o'clock. And I have to log in for that. So see right here, 529 college savings plan through T. Rowe Price. That's just an investment firm just like Merrill Lynch. So definitely, like here's New York Life. You can do it through like insurance companies. So it says Section 529 plans are named after the tax code that governs them. Almost all 50 states offer these plans, and rules vary by state. In many cases, you don't have to be a state resident to take advantage of them. So, okay, multiple states. I don't know why you would want to do that, but anyways. So there are 2 types of 529 plans. So like where basically we have, like it depends on who you're going to name as your beneficiary, I think is basically what they're saying. And maximum contribution amounts range from state to state. So maybe that's why you would want to invest in more than one state. Because if you are, that's really for people that are investing a lot of money, I would imagine. Here's the Coverdell that I was talking to you about. The prepaid tuition plan is something that Pennsylvania does have. And I have been, I linked, believe it or not, my 529, my UPromise, and the prepaid tuition plan. They're all linked together in my UPromise account and in my 529 account. They're all linked together. So when I go to my 529 account with my state, I can actually see what's in, like I can actually access my UPromise. So, and yes, you can choose how aggressively you invest. Let me see here once. Yes, we can do a couponing part 2. I just haven't, really, it's truly just about getting it on the schedule. Okay, so yes, you can definitely decide how aggressively you want to save for those. The rest of these, again, loans, you don't want to do grants, scholarships, and financial aids and tax credits, of course. Those are more for when your child is actually older and you're getting ready to make those, next steps or whatever. So basically these are the basic ways that you can save for college, or a Coverdell or a 529. So like I said, I mean, you just have to decide which ways you want to invest. So does anybody have any questions? Let me get back. Where's my chat screen at here? Any questions as far as any other topics? So we do the couponing one. For some reason, I was thinking if I was state specific. So if you have it, if you save in PA, your kids have to attend PA schools. Am I wrong in thinking that? The SAGE program, which is the prepaid tuition, that's the one I think you're thinking of. Double check 529. I don't think that you have to. I'm pretty sure your kids don't have to go to school in that state, but I do think that the SAGE program, the prepaid tuition, yes, it does have to be a PA school. Okay, do you know of any grant opportunities for people with degrees wanting to change career paths? Well, yes, there's the Pell Grant. It depends on your income, but basically the federal Pell Grant is the one that most commonly is used for people that are low income. And the other one that most people go with is they usually combine like a Pell Grant, and then there are also some other grants that there's like one other grant that they can give you, because I worked in financial aid in college in the financial aid office, and I actually got financial aid while I was in school, but most people do a Stafford loans. A Stafford loan can be subsidized or it can be unsubsidized depending on your income. If it's subsidized, that means that the government basically covers the interest for you while you're in school, but when you go back into loan repayment, then you end up having to pay the unsubsidized back first. And then you have to, oh, okay, so you're saying a grant for people that, no, the best way to, yeah, there are no real grants for once you have a bachelor's degree. But what I will share, as far as I'm aware, I mean, don't quote me on that, always call a school's financial aid office just to double check. And if you ever do find out that I'm wrong, email me and let me know. But I really think that for most cases like that, you're going to want to find an employer that reimburses. That's the best. That's what I did actually with my master's degree, is found school districts usually do pay for you to get your master's. And so that's one thing that you might want to look at. Oh, Courtney, thank you for that site. That's great. No, but I do think, Heather, that I don't think that there are any necessarily grants that you can get for your master's program, because I remember looking into that whenever I went back for my master's degree even. And my cousins who have all gone, I know that they also weren't able to get grants or anything. So that's a great question. Though I wish scholarships, though, maybe, but like I said, I know like where my sister works in Maryland, a place called Citicorp, they actually have like tuition reimbursement programs that they'll sometimes reimburse to get your master's. The other thing is, if you're going back for a master's and you're willing to do some kind of like adjuncting, sometimes you get adjunct as a professor. Other times people can like actually become grad assistants, which I know pays like absolutely nothing. So that's a tough one, but it is another way to make some money, at least while you're getting your master's degree. So, well, it's 8:55, guys, and I actually have to log in for my other one. So we're going to go ahead and call it a night unless you have any other questions for me. If you want a topic that you want me to speak about, or we want to kind of go further in depth or go back and revisit margin or something at another point, please let me know. But from this point, I'd like to do some accountability work kind of from the debt-free Facebook room so that we can kind of discuss, who's back on track, who's not back on track, and then maybe do a conference call, at some point to just talk where you guys can talk, where it's not just me sharing, where we can share as a group. That's another option that we can do. So I hope you guys have a great night, and if you don't, I don't see anything in the chat, so I want you guys to have a great week and just stay focused and let me know how you're doing, okay? Have a great night, guys.